Hello everyone. Now let's start our next chapter on the topic of how do firms manage financial risk. In this chapter, we'll be covering a number of learning outcomes. To start off, we'll be talking about the strategies used by firm to manage their risk exposure. We'll be talking about the relationship between risk appetite and firm's risk management decisions. We'll then be talking about some of the advantages and disadvantages of hedging risk exposures. Of course, we'll also discuss what hedging actually is, and then we'll also talk about the challenges that organizations face while implementing these hedging strategies. Then we'll be talking about some concepts related to hedging operational and financial risk, and in the end we'll be talking about some of the risk management tools and templates, which primarily includes risk limits and derivatives. So let's start our discussion with this very pertinent question of why firms should manage financial risk. The simple answer is that in this very complex financial environment where we have a lot of products available, where we have a lot of financial instruments available, it's very critical to manage risk. Of course, as market has become more sophisticated, as we have more products, as we have more options of investment, we have more volatility as well. So market has become more dynamic, but it has also become more volatile. And the importance of financial risk has been increasing over the years. The thing is that the organizations have been managing their operational risk for a very long time. They had been concerned about what sort of business risk do they have, what sort of goods they'll be requiring to run a business, what sort of employment options do they have, what sort of business models that they will be following. So all of these risks are mostly operational in nature, and most of the organizations have been implementing this. But over the years, the criticality, the importance of financial risk have increased further because the markets have realized that operational risk cannot be managed in silos, and they have to manage the financial risk to be able to manage their operational or business risk in an effective and efficient manner. Now, as we have discussed that market have become more sophisticated, we have more products, we have more options available, and there are definitely some increase, some new risk which comes with it. But on the other hand, we also have an opportunity to manage our risk well. So if the instruments are there, and if those instruments can provide you with some losses, if they can harm you, if they can harm your business, you can also use those products, you can also use those instruments to manage your risk well. So basically that's an opportunity for the firms to manage through a wide range of product. A typical example in the market which is being used is hedging your financial products. So what does hedging does? Basically, you have an exposure of $100 million and you are long on it. Like you actually hold this particular security, this particular cash flow. So basically you will find a product which is ideally an exact match of $100 million, and you take an opposite position in that particular product. And what happens is that if you have equal and opposite positions in the same kind of instrument, if this $100 million decline to $90 million, your other option, your other product would be increasing to $110 million, and you will be covering that $10 million that you lose on your long position from this particular position. Of course, we'll be discussing in a lot of detail when we will go to discuss hedging, and of course we will go to discuss derivatives in our later sessions, but just to give you a broad idea of how we can do hedging using multiple products and using alternate positions in a financial instrument. Now let's discuss what risk management process is. So we have studied what is the definition of risk. We have established that we should manage our risk well, but the question is, what is the process through which we can effectively manage our risk, and what is the approach that is generally being used by the industry, that is generally being practiced in the market. So the first process that we do while implementing our risk management strategies, we identify our risk. So whatever version of risk management process you adopt, the first step remains the same, and that is to identification of risk. This risk identification is extremely critical, because if you don't know what your risks are, you won't be able to manage this. So for example, if you are a bank or you are a financial institution, the first risk that you will think is credit risk, because you are lending money to people. You want to know who are the people you are lending money to, and to be able to do that, you need to know that the credit risk is there. You may also think of liquidity risk. You may also think of market risk if you're investing in the financial markets, which every bank does. So basically you identify your risk, but before you do that, you identify your firm's goal. What's your objective? What's your vision of initiating or establishing that particular organization? And after identifying your goal, after identifying your vision statement, you realize, you do a study that what are the risks that will actually cause problem and or that will be a hindrance in achieving your goals. So broadly speaking, a risk is something that can be a problem in achieving your goal. So unless you know your organization goals, you won't be able to identify your risk. So the first thing is to identify firm's goals, and then which goals and which are the risks which you should manage. Do you manage it? Do you really need to have a risk management process? We just established, yes, most of the organization, in fact all organization need some sort of risk management, and they already do those sort of risk management. But the question is how. The how is answered through creation of broad risk appetite statement. The concept of risk appetite statement is as such that you actually write your risk. For example, your market volatility will not decline from 10%. Like you're saying that the maximum amount of volatility that you can have is 10%. So you are just quantifying your risk. You can say that everyone in your organization should be aware of risk management process. All right. So whatever objectives you are, whatever risk you are identifying, you will be writing it down in form of risk appetite statements. In the second step, you will be mapping your known risk. So now you know that your credit risk is there, market risk is there, liquidity risk here. Now it's time to assist and measure your risk. For example, for the market risk, the calculate value at risk model. The value at risk model give you a number which can be used to calculate or to be able to set buffers for the financial risk. And then we also do cost benefit analysis. So not every risk needs to be managed. Of course, there are a number of risks that you will have to manage, but there can be risk that you can transfer to another party, or the risk that you know is critical for your business and you just don't need to hedge it, or the risk that you can transfer to another party. So you will be managing a risk which are worth managing, whose cost will be lower than the benefit that you will be getting while managing that particular risk. And based on on this measurements based on the cost benefit analysis, you will be creating a detailed risk appetite statement. So here in this first step, we have just identified broad statement. Now in the second step, we'll be further trickling down and we'll be saying that in the equity market, we will be managing 10% volatility. In the fixed income market, the volatility should remain 6%. In the foreign exchange market, it should remain 8%. So you are just further defining or further explaining your risk appetite statements. In the third step, we actually talk more about implementing or operationalizing our risk appetite statement. So we have defined it. Now we will have to assess existing policies and procedures and develop such frameworks through which we can actually implement our risk appetite statement. So if you have identified these statements now in this particular step, you will be building policies. So there would be risk appetite framework in which you will be mentioning all sort of risk that needs to be monitored. It will be a detailed document, and the document will be circulated to all of the employees in the bank who are responsible for managing that particular limit. In this step, we'll also be doing the right sizing of risk management. This is something that we'll just discuss shortly, but broadly speaking, we'll just be talking about the overall strategy that we will be adopting to implement risk management practices. So are we going for hedging? What would be the systems like? How many staff do we need? What are the accounting aspects? What are the taxation aspects of risk management? So we'll be defining the size of our risk management and the impact of our risk management cycle based on the size of our organization and our risk strategy, our risk vision. After we have built that policy, we'll be implementing those risk appetite statement or whatever risk we have identified. So by implementation, we mean that we'll actually be implementing it on day-to-day basis. So here we have identifying policies. Now we will enter those policies into IT systems, where there will be check and balance on the dealers, on the business people who will have to operate based on those certain limits. We will educate them, we will train them so that they know what sort of limits do they have to manage and how do they manage it. And we will have to build a system through which we can monitor limits. So yes, there's a limit on volatility in the financial markets, but if you leave it just on the front line, just on the business people, they won't be concerned about it because it may be impacting their business. So there should be a mechanism through which you can monitor your risk limits. So the risk management department, or the CRO, the chief risk officer, is the person who is primarily responsible for monitoring these limits. And in the end, it is, I think, very critical that we need to continuously monitor the process. So we keep reviewing the risk appetite, we keep reviewing the business strategies, we keep checking on the risk environments. So basically we want to remain updated. So maybe we did our analysis last year, but there's a new risk that has arisen because you entered in a new market, or you launched a new product, or there are certain market volatilities that you didn't consider earlier, which are new in the market. So you will have to actually come up with those, and you'll have to update your templates, and you'll have to identify and change the way you manage your risk. So risk management process just don't stop in implementation. It's a continuous cycle, and you will have to continuously monitor your risk management process. Now let's talk more about the risk appetite. So we define risk appetite as the willingness of the firm to accept risk. What's that number? What's that threshold where the firm is willing to take? For example, the firm has a size of $10 billion, and they say that they are willing to lose at least, and they say that they are willing to let go or lose $1 billion over a period of 5 years. Okay, this is a very crude example, but this is just a way of identifying what sort of risk you will be taking, what sort of risk you will be willing to take. It has broader two aspects, two components. Number one is risk willingness. Risk willingness, it's a desire for the firm to accept risk to achieve the business goals. So you know that there is volatility in the equity market, but you still invest in the equity market because you will be getting 10% return. If you play safe, if you don't accept the additional risk which comes with the equity market, you will be happy in investing in the fixed income market, but your return would be 4%. So risk willingness is the desire. It's the it's in the firm, the kind of risk that you are willing to accept to achieve your business goal. So your business goal, as we discussed earlier, the first step in the risk management process is to identify the goals. So maybe your goal is to attain 10% risk. So you may have avoided the additional risk in attaining 4% risk, but you are not meeting your business goal. You are just losing it. So in that particular case, you're losing your business goals. The second thing is risk ability. So you may have a lot of willingness, but you may don't have the capacity or the ability to manage that sort of risk. So you are willing to take that risk, this 10% risk, but you say that based on the profile that you have, if you have 10% loss, which is equal to the expected gain, you may be wiping out 70% of your equity. So you are willing to that sort of risk to achieve your financial goals, but you cannot afford it. So what you would do, you would just stick to it, and you would minimize your risk. You would minimize your revenue goal from 10% to 4% because you are willing to take that sort of risk, but you don't have the ability, you don't have the capacity to do that. The risk appetite is set well below the firm's risk capacity. So for example, if you were willing to take, if your capacity was $10 million, okay, you would be setting a risk appetite at about $7 million, and you would be setting your limits at about $5 million to keep some cushion, to keep some margin. This is how we generally set risk appetite in the financial markets. Another critical aspect is that firms are generally risk averse and they operate within their capacity, but there can be instances where firms take a project which is above its speciality. For example, the firm was not very much specialized in the FX market or in the FX hedging because they did not have such exposures, but they had a business deal where they could make some money. They enter in the FX market. They did not have the required system. They did not have the required expertise to do that, and they end up losing 50% of their equity. So it's not just about the risk willingness or this ability, it's also about keeping on a check what sort of goals you're having and what sort of the businesses that you'll have to carry in order to meet those goals. You don't want to take any risk which you cannot manage. You should basically operate within your own limitation, within your own expertise. Now let's talk about some of the risk management strategies very briefly. Based on the risk management process, we talk about assess and manage the risk and doing the cost benefit analysis. So while doing so, the senior management and the board of director is actually responsible for making a decision about the risk management. So there are broadly 4 options. Number 1 is avoid taking risks. So if they are concerned about a particular market, if they feel that they will be losing money out in that particular market, they just don't invest in that particular market. So if they don't have expertise in the commodity market, they just invent it. The second point is that they retain risk. So as I expected earlier, you know that there's an additional risk in the equity market, but you also know that the return you will be getting in the equity market would be 10%. So you retain the risk to achieve the additional return. The third thing is that you mitigate risk. So if you are lending, you take collateral and you try to somehow mitigate your risk. So if you are party A, which is a bank, if there's party B, which is a corporate, and you have lent $10 million, you may ask them to give them $10 million worth real estate as a collateral. So if they don't pay this money back, or if they backfire, if they don't meet their commitment, you will be selling this real estate and you will get your money back. In the last, you will just transfer your risk to another party. You take an insurance coverage, and then you try to manage your risk through transferring it to another party.